Hello all, welcome to the web application pen testing series at Pentester Academy. Now in this video, we will look at obfuscating certain parts of the redirect, specifically the params responsible for the redirect. Now, why is this obfuscation in the form of encoding, which is what we will look at, important? Well, a lot of times while doing the pen test, let's say you want to prove that if this URL was sent to a lot of people, some of them would end up clicking on it, then you want that part to be made as difficult as possible by the end user to detect on his own, right? You don't want securitytube.net or pentester.com or whatever you set up to be easily visible as part of the URL, because some users might just glance at the URL for a second and figure out it's something fishy, right? Now this is where in this video we will look at URL encoding, hex encoding, and successive encoding and see how it can completely obfuscate the look and feel of the URL. So let's jump right in. Okay. So you should have both of these PHP files as part of the download, right? The first index.php is pretty much just a simple PHP file which has a link to the redirect URL. Now the second one basically puts out a header parameter after applying a URL decode on the URL parameter. That's it, right? URL decode being used is very, very common in PHP applications. So let me go in here. Okay, so this is our URL. If you click on it, it forwards. Let's copy this URL. And we can clearly see that this is the parameter which we would want to change, just like what we saw in the previous videos. Now let's actually open up an editor to work with this. I'm going to use LeafPad. I'm going to paste this in here, remove this part, so I just have the URL with the parameter I want to keep changing, which is URL again. And let's actually paste this out a couple of times so that we can create these URLs in here, right? Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is apply a basic URL encoding. And if you just Google for URL encoder, decoder, this probably is the first site. It's what we use. I'm going to say HTTP securitytube.net. And I can go down, hit an encode. Copy this out. Paste it in here. Copy it out. Go back here. Paste it. Hit an enter. And there we go. Perfect, right? So now the // is something which in a way was obfuscated so that when a viewer visually sees it, he doesn't feel that there is a URL as part of the URL, at least at first glance, right? Great. Now, what I want to do is, you may have this question, right? When we paste it here, is the browser sending the request as is, which is with the %3as and all of that? Or is it just changing it to a // and sending it, right? We don't know. It isn't very important from our perspective most of the times, simply because the URL redirects and forwards are used to fool the end user rather than the remote server in any way. Given that the developer may have applied this application logic already. So here is what I'm going to do. Let's open up Wireshark. Let's launch Wireshark. Let me actually go full screen. And let me start sniffing on the loopback interface, right, which is where the server is running. And let's go back in here, paste it, hit and enter. There we go. And we can clearly see the traffic being generated. Here it is, right? So if you actually notice, we are sending this URL encoded part as is, right? Here is the server's response where it says not found but adds a redirect, and we can clearly see that the redirect is done to securitytube.net, right? And clearly, this means the server was able to decode it perfectly and send it back to us. Fantastic. Now let's look at this further. So now what if we want to go ahead and use full hex encoding, right? For this, I'm going to use RSnake's website, the XSS calculator. This is interesting because we can use the XSS calculator for full hex encoding. So I'm going to put this in. Just verify the URL is correct. Hit encode. Copy this out. Go back to LeafPad and paste it here. There we go. Now we can actually see that rather than just this part, right, which is clearly locatable in here, everything is hex encoded. And clearly this is something which the user almost will never be able to recognize visually. Now let's verify what gets sent. Start the sniffing. Let's go back in here, paste it, hit and enter. The redirect works perfectly. And if we go back in here, you can clearly see that this is what was sent to the server as is, and the server decoded it perfectly and sent us back to securitytube.net as expected. Fantastic. Now, one of the things, of course, is you could have taken this as well. On here, pasted this, copied it, go back to LeafPad. This one, of course, would be longer. Clearly see that. Copy this, paste this one, and there you go, right? I don't remember if I had enabled this, but if we had, okay, here is the second one. Here we see it, right? Fantastic. So as you can clearly see that now if this link is sent in an email, especially the one where you can go ahead and send out an HTML email, then this would be very, very easy to obfuscate, because when the user hovers his mouse over it, and of course in this case we have very predictably named this as redirect.php, but most end websites may just have an action/do with a list of parameters in a very cryptic way, right, such as r is equals or rms equals. which almost makes it impossible for the end user to figure out if this is some data, state data, or is this even a URL? It's almost impossible to figure it out. Okay, so let's do another interesting variation, with hex. So go back here, put this in, we've encoded it. So now this URL is completely full hex encoded once. I'm going to copy this out, paste it, and then click encode. So now the encoded form has been re-encoded. There you go. You can see now the size has considerably increased, which is of course expected. I'm going to copy this one out. Let's go back in here, paste it. And there you go. Again, this works perfectly. Now I could take this double encoded one, put it back again, encode it again, copy it out. Keep in mind there is a limit to the length of the URL, which we definitely can't exceed, or else this might just get truncated and not work, right? Which might be the case now. Right. If you notice more than double encoding, it doesn't seem to move ahead with this anymore. Can you see that? Anyway, so this is really how you can apply multiple encodings to go ahead and successive encodings just with hex to make this completely obfuscated, right? Completely obfuscated. And this really is probably the easiest way by which you can go ahead and send out a phishing or a spamming email to show to the enterprise and to the web developer how easy it might be to go ahead and trick end users into thinking that still they are working in the realm of the existing website. Okay, so that's all I had in mind for this video. And if you're enjoying your time at Pentester Academy, then please do recommend us to your friends and colleagues in the InfoSec community. Thank you.